Just starting now. Perfect.
Yeah,
I think we're on.
we're on. That's what it says.
So I thought I'd start by asking you a couple of questions because I've been thinking about this kind of topic of power, which you've obviously written the paper on recently. I've been thinking about quite a lot. But power is sort of such a big term in itself. There's loads of contexts in which it can operate. All the way through from power in government to power in kind of families. And, but I suppose the kind of power we're really interested in terms of the areas of work that we do, is kind of power in organizations. So I thought maybe a starting point would be just to, have you give us a bit of a sense of how does power in organizations sort of manifest itself? Is it, ownership power because somebody, owns everything? Is it managerial power because of their roles? Is it employee power because they have, the ability to stop work? Or is it employee power because they have a scarce skill that is required? There are all these kind of different aspects of, how power actually manifests itself. And what I think I've heard in some of the literature, you talk about sort of levers, or the levers of power. But I was wondering how you would see these aspects and how they kind of manifest themselves in organizations.
So I think the difference maybe between how I've been approaching the topic of power and a lot of what I've read and how other people have spoken about it is, um, regardless of the setting or the stage upon which power is enacted, whether it's, say, in a community or whether it's in an organization or whether it's in a family, my read of how a lot of people have talked about power is that it's a characteristic of the individual and it is rooted in their behavior. So it's something about what a person does that is power. They are either powerful, they are power over, they're dominating, they're power with, or they have, but it's all about what the individual is and what they're doing. So we would say, well, yes, that's part of the thing, but power also is in other places and it also takes other forms. And so in the paper that I just wrote, we define power as the way influence flows and stabilizes across mindset, behavior, culture, and system. And it is the interconnected processes between each of those things. So mindset to behavior, behavior to culture, culture back to mindset, all of that into system, through which people and the rules and the infrastructure all shape what is possible. So power is about what is possible, who gets what, and whose preferences and interests prevail over time. And so that's how we define what power is and the kinds of places that it is enacted, that it is stored, that it plays out. So I guess that's the thing that we've done is we've said, well, power exists in mindsets, power exists in people's behavior, power exists in their relationships and in the norms, the stories that people tell each other, and it is also existing in the structures and systems of our organization and our society.
And if you think about those places that the power influences, mindset, system, behavior, culture, are they sort of equally important? Is there no distinction between them? Are they sort of this mess of mixed things influence each other? You know, when you enter into one of these situations, and again, I think it might be helpful at some point to kind of make this more tangible as I think about, my own practice as a consultant. I don't have, you know, systemic. Well, arguably, maybe there is systemic power. Sometimes a consultant goes in, and because they're external and somebody who is senior has asked them to go in, there is an aspect of that sort of power in place. But I often think of a consultancy as being a space where you don't go in to try and push power, although I'm sure some consultants do, because if you're going for a big restructuring kind of thing, that's exactly how they operate. It's just not just, it hasn't been my own way of operating. But from your kind of perspective, it might again be worth just looking at the perspectives from whether it's an individual kind of thing or whether it's organizational change piece. Would that affect which one of those four areas you started with or considered in any kind of intervention? And maybe even just taking a step back, even
Yeah.
thinking about intervention into the situation, how would you start to kind of approach that?
Well, look, it's a fascinating example you've brought up, and it makes me laugh because I think I do my best work as an organizational development or transformation consultant when I am powerful in the system. And usually that power comes from being appointed by, invited in by the person, the CEO, the person who has the most power in the system. And it is quite amazing, I have found, the difference between when it's that person, the person in that role, who's got me in versus, say, somebody who usually doesn't have a lot of power in the system, which would be, say, people and culture or HR. So, if you're invited in that way, whole different reception, completely different reception. And then my ability to do whatever it is I want to do is completely different just based on that. So the behavior of those individuals might not have anything to do with it. It's structural, but it's also their mindset, and it's the mindsets of everybody else, because the instruction is exactly the same. The emails are exactly the same. The material is exactly the same, but how it's received is entirely different. And so power is operating all over the place. It's in me, it's in the CEO, or it's in PNC, it's in the people receiving all this community. Like, it's just completely going all. So which one's more important? Ugh. I mean, you need to pick a moment in time, and maybe then I'll be able to have an opinion. But it just moves and shifts and changes so dynamically. The stock answer is they're all important, equally and differently at all times.
Which then I think it leads into something around individuals. So whether it's a CEO or somebody else, these are usually busy people, and their most important thing is time and attention. What they kind of pay attention to. So I've often found that a technical approach. So, for example, you want to go in there into an organization and look at something technical. In one sense, that's valued because you're doing something tangible, but it doesn't necessarily make a big change, because quite often the biggest changes need to happen inside the minds of people. So if you have a CEO who kind of is very operationally focused, on the nuts and bolts of things, but who doesn't see kind of the culture, people type activities, you're sort of constrained by their mindsets. In a sense, you have to almost go through the CEO's, the whole sort of mindset piece here is a starting point. In order to access the power of the CEO, you have to first tap into the mindset of the CEO.
Yeah. Well, and you need, in my experience, I've had to spend an awful lot of time creating a relationship and therefore trust with that person, and that I'm able to kind of tell them my story about what I think their job is, what I think the work is that they need to do in order to affect this outcome that they want to. And it's like, well, usually it's the inside out work. It's like, actually, this is an adaptive problem. Heifetz, it's kind of adaptive problem. It's not a technical problem. It looks like it might be a technical problem, maybe, but they almost never are. And so that means that the CEO, the job is they need to change themselves. They need to renovate their own mindset. They need to change their own behaviors about how they do things in order to get these outcomes. And it's kind of my job to sell that message to those people. It's like you actually have to change yourself if you want to change this organization. It's not about them. It's not skilling them, whoever they are. It's yourself. It's you need to do your own mindset work. You need to do your own reflection. You need to do your own development work. So yes, absolutely, that's the piece.
I mean, that's quite an old message, isn't it? Like before you try and change the world, you first need to change yourself. You can't just jump into something.
Yeah, I mean, if by old you mean somebody said it a long time ago, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And it's the hardest thing to do, and people
Mm,
still don't want to do it. And it's been around for centuries,
mm.
and people don't want to do it because it's hard. It's challenging. It's difficult. It's unpleasant. It's hard work. So people would rather stay the same. They would rather be satisfied with who they are and go, no, no, I'm good, thanks. I've got this far. I'm a success. Tick.
So, I mean, that leads into something which is again quite topical. It's something that I think a lot of us have to deal with all the time, which is when it comes to trying to change, you have kind of a what you might call sort of long-term, approach to change, where you think about something and you need to change the behaviors, mindset, systems, and culture over time to make things happen,
Yep.
or you go for some kind of a shortcut. And
Mm.
people always want a shortcut. They want something that's quick and easy. So perhaps it's worth going into what are the kind of shortcuts before people accept that there is a need for change, that long-term change requires, an adaptive approach to these areas.
Yeah.
Um, the pitfall is, well, actually, let's do a quick and easy job. Let's just kind of fire everybody and get some new people in. It's that sort of thinking, isn't it? If you can't change what's going on, change the people, and then things will change. Bring a new CEO, it'll all
Yeah.
change. So, what sort
Yeah.
of shortcuts do you see, and what do people try and reach for first, typically? You know,
So are you asking are you asking are there any real shortcuts
no, I'm
or
saying what do people tend to go for? Because this is the kind
right?
of, if we're saying that people are often reflexively good, they don't want to change, so they
Yeah.
prefer these other options, which I typically think of as magic bullets or shortcuts or something that's snake
Yeah.
oil.
Yeah.
What do you commonly see happening?
Look, there's a few things, and they tend to overlap. What you mentioned about replace the CEO, and look, sometimes you absolutely need to, or replace certain people. If you can't change the team, then change the team. That sort of stuff. And so I think that can be a shortcut that people go to. It's like, oh, you're the problem, so I'm going to get rid of you, and I'll get someone new, and they'll be good. And then usually it doesn't actually fix the thing. The new person isn't, or the old person wasn't the problem. So, and again, you go back to biblical times. We call those scapegoats because they used to sacrifice a goat. That's why we like, it's this is Neolithic thinking, and we still do it. So um, there's that. I think there's the restructure lever. It's like, oh, well, if only different people had different accountabilities or they were in charge of different things, then this bit would, and that'll fix it. So they go to the restructure piece. And again, that's usually not the answer. There can be better structures and worse structures, sure, but most of the time, again, that's not the answer. And I mean, there's one organization we did work with not all that long ago, but they had gone through so many restructures, one after another, after another, after another, that people actually didn't know who they reported to any longer, and they didn't really know what their job was. It had changed so many times, so rapidly, and they just kept on making it worse.
Mm.
I think you mentioned one earlier, so a third one would be go the system. It's like, just if we get a new system, especially technology systems, this will fix it. This will be the enabler. So all those ERP things, it's like, they've actually arguably made everything worse. It's the technological information, something technology, IT is going to, that's a shortcut. That's a false pill. Um, is there anything else that's worth mentioning? No, I think that's it. I mean, like those are the typical ones.
I suppose
Change
one more
out
that I'm thinking
people.
about is, I've certainly experienced a couple of times, and this happens quite a lot in something like sales activity. You're like,
Mm.
well, I haven't got time to do this really important thing, like reaching out to people and talking to them about our business. So I'll just hire somebody who's going to do that. And then you find out, in a year's time, actually, it doesn't happen because the kind of expectations that you put on this new person, it actually requires a team or a system approach, and you're just hoping that one individual can deliver a whole
Yeah,
series of changes that just aren't possible.
yeah. Honestly, I think I might be guilty of that myself. So yes, I think that's a good candidate for a quick fix. Is outsource it, or get someone else to do it. It's like, actually, no, it's my work, or whatever it is. It's like, no, I need to fix that. We're working with a client currently, and I mean, the everything I'm looking at tells me that they have devolved so much decision making about how the work needs to happen to such a lower level, and those people can't see the whole thing, and
Mm.
they just optimize the little bit. And so again, it's not working at the right level, and people not taking accountability for, actually, that's your job. You need to make that decision, and
Yeah,
you need to do the work to design the things so that it works. um, I
and that's
think
a classic
that's
kind of systems problem, isn't it? Where you're locally optimal, but the system doesn't work because the relationships between the parts haven't been designed, and sometimes you actually need slack in the system to make it work properly. It's
that stuff. Absolutely, it's that stuff. I think it was Goldrat who talked about local optimization at the expense of the whole. And so,
yeah,
yes, from a system design point of view, um, guaranteed disaster.
and you know while there's a few, I mean, there's a few reasons why people might go for these shortcuts. I suppose one is they're sold the idea by other people. They're kind of persuaded into this concept. But to what extent is it a function of sort of managerial education? Because I know that the levels of education managers vary massively across the
Yeah.
world, and some of these learnings, you can't. Sometimes it's not the people; it is a systemic problem. Deming's talked about it. Goldratt's talked about it in different ways. You have all this literature about these things, but even now, a new manager might go, right, to solve this, we need a new system. Let's go and buy an ERP system, or I'll go off and find a tool to do this. And is that sort of function of managerial education? Is it an experience thing that you have to go through and make these mistakes in order to learn them? I mean, if you think about if you think about CEOs, I guess, and take say a population of startup CEOs, they've come out
Mm.
of university, they've done their degrees, they've done much startups, they might have had a successful one for 5, 6 years and sort of growing it. But arguably many of the most powerful people in the world right now have come from a very technocratic kind of background
Mm.
where they build machines and make things work. These concepts are about people and behavior and culture. So, maybe they aren't taught them or they haven't had experience them in their businesses. And they believe that what they've done so far, which has been successful in a technology focused environment, would translate very well into a more general organization environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I need to be careful here not to jump into ad hominem attacks on different kinds of people, but um, I don't know if it's education exactly. I think education is part of it. And again, that would be the distinction I'd make between mindset, kind of on that uh, more intangible side, versus behavior or skills or knowledge, which is more tangible. It's I can test for it. I can fill out a multiple choice exam. I can, um, and yes, there is skill and there's education and there's exposure to different thinkers and yes, like so, and that is ongoing. Like I think everyone's across this idea of continuous education. It's not like we get our degree and we're done. There's an expectation, and I think a reasonable one, that people keep reading, they keep learning, they keep. But there's also development, which is kind of that left side of the mindset piece, and it's we don't kind of get through puberty and get to 20 something and then we're done as adults. We continue to mature, we continue to grow and develop our mindsets, our value systems, our perspective on the world, um, and our meaning making, our sense making capacity, and the patterns we use when we do that. And that's pretty describable. There's a known pathway as adults develop. It's both. So I think it's both. So yes, there's people who just want to get on with it, will search for the silver bullet. They will look for the easy solution. It's like they don't want to spend the time. They don't want to be quiet and contemplate. That's a waste. They just want to get on with it because it's about, and that's their mindset. So I think there's a development piece, and then there's a education or a skill piece. It's both.
So it sounds like, if someone wanted to transition from maybe a short-term shortcut type approach to this more long-term approach, it's not really a question of wanting. It is, about the development path, right?
Mm.
And so for people within and outside organizations, if somebody is in a position where they're trying to kind of influence this organization as a system, and they have to start by influencing the people in the system to exercise power, it feels like the starting point actually is to kind of assess where they are then on this kind of this development pathway. And so are there any kind of indicators that somebody is, sufficiently along that pathway for the intervention to actually be useful? So would you sort of go into an organization, talk to people, and actually go, you're not the right stage for me to help you, or arguably they aren't at the right stage to listen to what you're saying? Is there some kind of almost red line in this space where you can intervene, where you can't intervene?
100%. Yes. So there's lots of different ways to assess people against different pathways, different lines of development. So there's lots of different ways to do that. Some are more formal than others, and you can kind of get a bead on someone. You can kind of get a read on them just even by talking to them for 2 or 3 minutes. So you kind of start to plot where people are at. And absolutely, there's some people for whom those people have no interest in doing this work. They just want it fixed, or they just want the problem to go away, and they're not interested in or willing to look in the mirror and look at themselves. And so those people won't be suitable to do the kind of work that I like to do, and they'll think that I'm a waste of time and confusing. And for them, I would be. So yeah, it's not for everybody, and there's definitely people who sometimes are in charge of big things that this is not going to help because they're not interested, they're not ready, they don't want it. So yeah.
So then, what are the characteristics of someone who is, interested or in a position? So, I guess the argument would be, in order to increase chance of success, it helps if you are a certain, or you become a certain kind of person. So where we started off before, it's a change in yourself in order to I've seen this in my own kind of practice early on as somebody who kind of built systems. I would create code and it would work, and that was fine because code doesn't talk back to you or answer back. The minute I had people who were reporting to me, it became a lot harder because they would almost, willfully misunderstand what I wanted them to do. But arguably, it was, later on, I might have learned more about me communicating to them or expecting things from them. You still have this thing around. At some stage, you transition into kind of going, well, it is about me. It's kind of what I do and how I relate to people that has an impact on how they relate back to me. I think there's kind of a story about like a Zen master who kind of goes, you go off to a monastery and you're really peaceful and calm and everything else, and people go, how do you kind of maintain this level of kind of self-awareness, whatever? And he goes,
Yeah.
actually, it's part of a context. You could ask somebody if they're kind of evolved when they go back and spend time with their family. That's when all the stuff comes back in because all the childhood, experiences and so on make you regress back to the kind of person you were then. It's very easy to be detached and calm when you're in the middle of nowhere with nothing affecting you. It's much harder when you're in the middle of the real world with all the stuff that kind of goes on. So I suppose, what would be the characteristics of someone who recognizes that maybe they need to start by working on themselves if they want to actually make a change?
So I think the probably the easiest and best way to start to think about this was coined by a guy called Robert Keegan, who's a professor of adult development at Harvard and has done a lot of work in this space. And we've picked up a lot of his stuff because it's good quality. And he said, well, look, there's a number of different places you can kind of operate from, and the by far the most people, the biggest head count, and they've done some research into like how many, and it's roughly about 75% of the population operates at what he calls socialized and below, which below would be kind of egocentric, but at socialized is kind of the pinnacle of our civilization in a sense. Now it's who's successful. It's you grow up, you get a education, you get a good job, you have a family, like it's all of those things that we're taught makes us successful and contributing members of society. And there's different flavors within that broad category, but it might be someone who's kind of more expert driven, have my own expertise in a particular area, whether it's software, coding, whatever it is. And it's like, and that's how I see the world. It also includes people who are kind of more, well, I'm just focused on the outcome and I want to achieve things. But in both cases, that's kind of, it's about fitting in. And the locus of control there is outside me. So it's somebody's given me a set of rules and I'm following those rules. Someone tells me what success looks like, and that's what I'm striving for. So whether it's the church or whether it's the military or whether from really traditional ways, or whether it's Channel 7 or Channel 10 or the ABC, or somebody's telling me, giving me, advertisers are giving me messages about this is what it means to succeed, and I buy that. I take that on. All the influencers and all the rest of that is all very socialized levels of thinking. It's someone external to myself is telling me, is giving me messages, and I'm accepting them about what I should be, how I should think, how I should operate. Keegan then says, well, at some point, those external rules no longer fit. At some point, I get to a place where I go, you know what? I don't want to do it like that. I'm not interested in having this kind of house. I don't want to make as much money as I possibly can and not see my kids. I don't want to live here or do that or buy that thing or buy another thing or have to get the next iPhone or be really interested in what's on Facebook. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to have those things impinging on me. I want to do my own thing. I want to head off and travel. I don't want to typical career. I want to write something. And so those people he calls self-authoring. And so self-authoring is people who go, well, I get what the society tells me, I get what the rules are, but I don't want to do that. I'm going to make up my own rules about me. I'm going to author myself consciously. I'm going to do things differently. And if they look like they're the same, it's because I've thought about it and I've chosen them. It's because I've listened to my heart and I've chosen it, not because someone just gave me and said, this is what it is to be good. So it's that sense of I'm going to head off and redefine what success is and what the meaning of my life is. And it's there where we start to get, well, these people become interested in this sort of developmental journey. These people are the ones that are going to go, actually, there's other things available. It's not just how everyone else does it. I'm not interested in that anymore. Beyond that, self-authoring is really moving from self-authoring to self-transforming is his next stage, which takes that and sort of ups it. And basically it's well, now not only do I redefine myself and the rules and what's important and what I want and what I'm going for, but I also recognize that there's other people who are doing that and we need to do it together. It's a systemic approach. It's actually there's a bigger thing to be created. The context of society itself, the structures and the systems that are going to support flourishing for more than just me. It's not individualistic any longer. It's actually collectivistic in a way. It's about the future, the long-term future. It's about my children and grandchildren. It's about the institutions of society. It's about the values and norms that are going to create longer term flourishing. And so that's kind of where we're talking about people who are leading organizations actually need to be getting to, because rather than that short-termism where it's just about this quarter's results or I just need to look important, it's got to be, no, I'm in charge of a lot of assets and I've got a lot of capital at my disposal and I've got a lot of power in society. And so I want to be and need to be making those decisions with a different kind of ethics, a different sort of morality, a different kind of social contract.
That actually kind of completes this loop quite nicely. I think the last thing you said in there around that journey then gets you ready to actually make that longer term impact. And I think this is one of the kind of concepts that people need to think about, because you know it's hard to make change without power. Yes, you can influence things, but ultimately everything is there's a I read one of sort of Orwell's essays recently, and they're all the kind of written in the 1940s. They're still as relevant now as they were then. And he talks about just you have to understand the nature of power in order to be able to affect it. And people, it's important to understand that you need power to make change happen, but the way you think about how you apply that power makes a difference between this kind of short-term reactive approach to just kind of doing something very quickly versus a longer-term change that has the systemic approach to it. So I think that kind of loop around there does help to clarify what someone needs to do. You kind of you start off where you are. Most people socialized are taught that, I guess, there are shortcuts, and shortcuts do work, and maybe they do work in a number of cases. But after a certain point, if you want to do real long-term transitional change that benefits your organization and society more generally, you have to go through this kind of developmental journey. So that is very helpful as kind of the route map almost to the roadmap somebody needs to follow in their own kind of personal journey.
And this again, this kind of thinking links in or plugs into some of the stuff that you and I have been talking about earlier around, the impact of technology, and now especially perhaps AI, around even just people's attention span and their ability to think and operate in a longer time scale, and whether or not this is all foreshortening us until it becomes more and more difficult to get to this longer term mindset and this longer term way of acting and thinking. So, well, good. Yes. No, that it's all for me. And when I'm doing this work, it's all connected.
Should we stop it here? I think that's probably a really good kind of point.
I think you're right. It feels like that's completed. Thanks for that.